So my question to you is, Z, do you have sort of, I guess I'll let you sort of ramble here for a while, 3 secrets on how to get funded? Like, what are you guys actually looking for, and what do you want to see from people in my audience?
Number one, a visual of what the game looks like. Before you pitch anything, if you don't have something that is maybe an image, maybe a trailer,
Yeah.
the more precise the better. But just something that could tell me what your final goal for this game will it looks like. If I can't visualize your game, I can't get excited for it. I can't be emotionally attached to your game. So there's no reason for me to care.
Yeah.
So with that, a visual is very, very important. That's number one. Number two, budget. If you don't have your budget clearly stated within your initial pitch, there's always something, like even if you are a seasoned veteran, there's always kind of like just this kind of like inkling in the back of the publisher's head. It's like, what is this person up to, right? Like, are you trying to, like, first of all, is it that you don't know what your budget is, so that you're still trying to figure it out, so you're not even ready to pitch yet, but you already pitched it, so I guess you did it wrong? Or are you trying to play me? Are you trying to play the game of trying to negotiate more money, right? Because then it comes off as dishonest. So you're either don't know what you're doing, or you're being dishonest about what you're doing. That's kind of what it comes off when you don't have a specific budget.
Okay.
From your.
Can I ask a quick question there?
Yeah, go ahead.
There's a lot of questions really, but
Yeah.
the first one is, what if an indie developer doesn't need the money but they want the money? Because I've had conversations in the past with publishers where they're like, I don't care if you go buy a house with this money. So I'm curious what, and I didn't, by the way.
That's totally fine, and that's completely reasonable. And I would argue that you do need the money. You need a house, right? Like that's completely normal. I think the thing is, you have to realize the publisher also isn't stupid, right? Like, they'll look at something and be like, oh, you're making an indie platformer, you're asking for $2.5 million. Let's talk about it. If I'm interested in the game, let's talk about it, right? Like, it's much better than you showing the publisher the platformer. They're excited, we jump on a call, and then they ask you for a budget, and then you say, oh, 2.5 million, and then they'll just sit there and be like, are you an idiot?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah.
And then now it's like a really awkward situation. Like, I think there's a middle ground. You just have to be transparent, I suppose. Like, that transparency, I think, is important, because it opens up the conversation.
So here's a question for me personally. If I was seeking funding for like a game like Father, my next game, you're saying it's better for me to go, this is my budget, and 70% of it is just because I feel like I'm worth it. Is that a good thing to do? I'm not saying that that's what I'm gonna say, but I'm curious. What is that? Like, I'm worth it. I want the cash. See you later.
Yeah. So there's two takes on this. Obviously, which is the two takes that you're already considering. I think ultimately, like, yes, you can do that, especially with what you have already done. I think there's a lot of arguments there that you can make, that, hey, look at the success that I've done before. Check out the games that I have released. Like, having a portfolio is a totally different story.
It's almost like
already.
A seasoned
Like,
director who wants to work with a studio. He's like, look, you owe me 1 million because I'm me. And I'm not saying that's how I think. I'm just saying, like, worst case scenario, if my audience went to a publisher and did that, if they were seasoned and they had 3 great games under their belt, like, for example, Team Cherry. I feel like Team Cherry could go up to, I don't know, Curve Games is what they're called now. They used to be Curve Digital, now they're Curve Games. They could go up to Curve and say, we want 10 million just because.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Of course. I mean, look at it. Like, J.J. Abrams is not gonna go to a film company and be like, oh, I want $10 million for this film, and let me tell you exactly how I'm gonna spend it on my own life. I really need an armchair. I've been missing it for a while, so that's part of the budget.
Yeah.
He's not gonna do that. He's gonna be like, oh, 5 million goes to me because I'm J.J. fucking Abrams. Right? Like, like, I think that's just how it kind of works.
Yeah.
When a game like Abzu gets signed, Abzu got signed so simply because they worked on Journey, and they don't need anything. They don't have to prove anything because they have already done so through the fact that they released a successful game, they had the spreadsheets to show for it. Everything is already there. They don't need to say a thing. All they have to do is sit there and say, well, I made Journey. Give me the money. So yeah, I mean, there is that strategy. However, I will say that on the flip side, that doesn't always resonate with every partner. And also that certainly comes from a position where you have already had that portfolio. If this is your first game that you're pitching, if you haven't worked in a studio that launched successful games, if you don't have a lot to show that is noteworthy, then it's almost impossible for someone to come in here and just trust you like that.
Right.
For example, there's a lot because of COVID. I mean, a lot of people are kind of leaving film to go into games, right? Because you can't shoot, and things get tough.
Yep.
So there's a lot of film people like flooding into the game industry, and these film directors have launched films and have sold them to Netflix and feel super successful, and then they would put together this budget and go to these big publishers and pitch them, and they get rejected every time. Almost no film director, you hear very little film directors actually successfully making it in the game industry. And the reason is because they're assuming that they can use their credentials to transfer into games, but that's not true at all. And there's not a lot of strong overlap between the two industries. So so publishers have learned to not really kind of pursue that line of business. So even though they have released a lot of really good films, they're still waiting for them to actually make some good game breaks before they're able to sign bigger deals.
Okay. Yeah. So that budget, really quick. Do we put that on our vertical slice, like on our pitch deck? Like let's say I sent y'all an email, or I send an email to Double Fine. Does the email say, here's my pitch deck, and then they click on the pitch deck, it takes them to a web page, and that has the budget breakdown on there, like a generic breakdown and a trailer? Is that how you propose it?
I've seen that actually works really well. I've seen just a PDF, like with some links on there, with some pictures, and then some numbers. I've seen it just typed up in an email as well with some embedded images. I've seen it all. And yeah, I think all of that works. At the very least, just have that one number for the total budget and describe like, what does that total budget account for? Like, did you account for marketing in there? Did you account for porting in there? And a lot of that stuff adds onto it. So from a publisher perspective, I would have to take a look. Oh, you have $300,000 there, and I have to then dig a little deeper. Like, does this include Nintendo Switch porting? Does this include PR and making a trailer? A lot of these things. Maybe you could say like, oh, I will be making the trailer myself, so you don't have to do it. So now I can okay, cool. We can kind of cut a little bit more cost from our end. And then that's how we're able to at least start the conversation.
Okay. Cool. So we got budget. Imagery was the first one. Budget's the second one.
Yeah. So the third one that I would give is the build, which it's pretty straightforward. I think this one is probably a little bit looser than the other two, because not every game really requires a hands-on feel until for it to sound good. I'll actually be honest, for Serenity Forge, because our games are so narrative driven, the build is probably the least important. Meanwhile, if you talk to any other publisher, the build is probably always number one.
Wow.
The reason is because we have a strong imagination for narrative. So when we look at a pitch deck, when we look at the imagery and then look at the budget, we're able to kind of imagine, okay, how does this game, what kind of a story is this game telling, without having to actually play the build.
And by the way, guys, I wanted to let you know that my brand new course, Easy 3D, is totally free right now. Click below to enroll for free, and you'll immediately be taken to the program where you're going to learn how to make your very first 3D game. And here's the best part. You're going to do it fast. And you really don't need to know anything about Unity or code or 3D modeling. It's really kind of easy, and it's totally free. Click below to make your very first 3D game. I can't wait to see you succeed.